Imagine a battlefield where the deadliest weapon isn't a tank or a fighter plane or even a new kind of bomb, but something far more mundane, almost invisible: a nation's teeth. It sounds absurd, doesn't it? Yet, in the crucible of World War II, as American soldiers began to disembark from their transport ships in ports like Gourock and Liverpool during 1942 and 1943, a subtle, almost unbelievable truth began to emerge. British civilians, and even their own battle-hardened troops, looked on with a mixture of awe and bewilderment. These fresh-faced Americans, despite the grim realities of war, often flashed smiles that were strikingly, almost unnervingly healthy. Their teeth, white and remarkably intact, stood in stark contrast to the widespread dental decay and missing molars that plagued a wartime Britain, where dental care was a luxury often postponed amidst the exigencies of survival. This wasn't just a cosmetic difference, it was a systemic advantage, a silent testament to a nation's capacity to care for its own, even under the most extreme pressure. Nos próximos 40 minutos, you will see exactly how this dental disparity arose and why it still resonates in national strategies today. The initial shock among the British wasn't merely about aesthetics. It was a stark visual reminder of the differing realities of two nations, allies bound by a common enemy, yet shaped by profoundly different pre-war public health landscapes. For a British soldier in 1943, a nagging toothache was a common, debilitating affliction. Painkillers were scarce, dentists even scarcer, and the idea of preventative care felt like a distant dream in a country where rationing dominated daily life, and the focus was squarely on the war effort. The average Briton had already endured years of economic hardship, followed by the relentless strain of the Blitz, which had pushed dental health far down the list of priorities. Wartime diets, heavily reliant on starches and sugars, further exacerbated the problem, leading to what many medical officers quietly acknowledged as a national dental crisis. Conversely, the American GI arriving on British shores often represented a generation that had benefited from a burgeoning public health movement back home. While the Great Depression had hit hard, the United States had, in the decades prior, seen significant advancements in dental education and a gradual increase in access to care, particularly in urban centers. Figures like Dr. Arthur Merritt, president of the American Dental Association in 1930, had championed preventative dentistry, pushing for public awareness campaigns and the integration of oral hygiene into mainstream health. This wasn't a universal utopia, but it built a foundation. By the time America entered the war in December 1941, the average American recruit, while still facing dental issues, this wasn't a secret weapon, but a systemic advantage, reducing non-combat casualties and easing the strain on medical services already stretched thin by battle wounds. The British medical establishment, under the leadership of figures like Sir Wilson Jameson, Chief Medical Officer, couldn't ignore the clear contrast. Reports filtering back from the ports highlighted the discrepancy, prompting internal discussions about the long-term health implications for their own fighting forces. How could a nation, known for its stoicism and resilience, have overlooked such a fundamental aspect of soldier readiness? What hidden factors truly shaped this silent advantage that America brought to the Allied cause? If you were a military planner in London in 1943, realizing this disparity, what immediate actions would you prioritize? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The answer, it turns out, lies not in some grand military innovation, but in the quiet workings of peacetime society and the immense logistical engine that now powered its war machine. The robustness of American dental health served as a subtle yet potent indicator of the profound, often invisible advantages that the United States brought to the Allied effort, advantages forged not on the battlefield, but in the dietary shifts and public health policies of the preceding decades. The roots of this striking divergence weren't found on the battlefield, but in the kitchens and clinics of the pre-war era. Consider the American diet of the 1930s. While the Great Depression certainly brought hardship, the sheer scale of American agriculture meant a more diverse food supply was generally available than in resource-scarce Britain. Americans, on average, consumed more fresh vegetables, fruits, and protein, even if simply due to the vastness of the continent and its varied produce. This wasn't a perfect picture, of course, but it laid a nutritional groundwork. For instance, the consumption of milk, a source of calcium crucial for dental health, saw campaigns like the Drink More Milk initiative throughout the 1930s, subtly shaping public health habits. This created a generation of young men entering the military with stronger dental structures and fewer pre-existing conditions. Across the Atlantic, the British population had already been under severe dietary restrictions for years before the American GIs even arrived. Wartime rationing, instituted in January 1940, meant staples like meat, sugar, butter, and cheese were severely limited. The average Briton relied heavily on carbohydrates, bread, potatoes, and often the surprisingly abundant wartime sweets, which were distributed as morale boosters. These sugary treats, along with flour-based products, became a silent enemy, eroding dental health on a national scale. The Ministry of Food, under figures like Lord Woolton, focused on caloric intake to sustain the war effort, an entirely rational priority, but one that inadvertently sacrificed dental wellness for immediate energy. This created a profound nutritional imbalance that mirrored the visible dental decay. But it wasn't just pre-war diets or wartime rationing that told the story. The American military itself had a distinct strategic approach to its soldiers' health, particularly oral hygiene. From the moment recruits entered training camps across the United States, like Fort Benning in Georgia or Camp Pendleton in California, they were subjected to rigorous dental examinations. The U.S. Army Dental Corps, established in 1911, had grown into a formidable force by World War II, boasting over 15,000 officers and enlisted personnel by 1945. Their doctrine wasn't just about treating pain, it was about preventing it. Every soldier received a basic dental kit upon induction, complete with toothbrushes and toothpaste, and was instructed in proper oral hygiene. This might sound trivial, but it was a systemic commitment to readiness. The logistical challenge of maintaining this standard across millions of men deployed globally was staggering. Yet the American industrial engine, already producing tanks and planes at an unprecedented rate, also churned out millions of tubes of toothpaste and countless toothbrushes. These weren't considered luxuries, they were essential equipment, just like ammunition or uniforms. Mobile dental units, equipped with portable chairs and drills, were deployed right behind the front lines, providing care in conditions that would shock modern dentists. Imagine a field dentist, perhaps Captain Robert Smith of the 3rd Infantry Division in Sicily in 1943, working under canvas, pulling a tooth while distant artillery rumbled. This wasn't just a service, it was a strategic imperative, ensuring that a soldier's fighting capacity wasn't compromised by a preventable ailment. This massive, coordinated effort represented a national investment in human capital, a subtle advantage that few truly appreciated at the time. How did this focus on seemingly minor details ultimately translate into tangible military gains in the brutal campaigns that followed? The answer lay not in grand tactical maneuvers, but in the relentless, grinding attrition of daily combat, where every soldier counted. A soldier battling a throbbing toothache, unable to properly chew his K-rations, was a soldier operating at diminished capacity, a liability in a firefight. This wasn't merely discomfort, it was a drain on unit effectiveness. Consider the 1st Infantry Division, during the North Africa campaign in late 1942. While facing Rommel's Afrika Korps, every man fit for duty was critical. Dental emergencies, from abscesses to broken teeth, could pull a soldier from the line just as surely as a bullet. The sheer volume of non-combat casualties due to preventable illness, including dental issues, could cripple an advance. American dental readiness meant fewer instances of this, translating directly into more boots on the ground, more rifles firing, and a higher sustained combat power. This reduced strain became a quiet logistical triumph. The U.S. Army Dental Corps, with its vast network of field dentists and mobile units, treated an astronomical number of cases. Over 64 million dental procedures were performed on American servicemen by 1945. This wasn't just about fillings. It was about preventing infections that could spread, incapacitating a soldier for weeks. Think of a medical clearing station, already overwhelmed with shrapnel wounds and trench foot. Every dental case averted meant more resources, more beds, more medical personnel, more precious antibiotics, available for direct battle casualties. It was an efficiency multiplier, a silent strategic force that allowed commanders to maintain operational tempo with less disruption. But how did this seemingly simple advantage extend beyond mere numbers and impact the very psychology of the fighting man? Beyond the raw statistics, the impact on morale was profound. Imagine the stark difference between a soldier plagued by chronic dental pain, constantly distracted and irritable, and one who could eat, sleep, and focus without such a debilitating discomfort. Morale, often an intangible asset, is built on countless small foundations, and the ability to maintain basic physical comfort is paramount. A soldier with healthy teeth could consume the often tough field rations, providing vital energy for long marches and intense combat, whereas a man with a painful mouth might skip meals, weakening over time. The psychological toll of constant pain, even if not immediately life-threatening, could erode discipline and camaraderie, a slow poison in the ranks. This wasn't lost on the British, who, despite their own stoicism, recognized the debilitating effect of widespread dental decay among their troops. By 1944, British medical reports frequently acknowledged the superior dental health of their American allies, leading to internal pressures for reform. The scale of the American commitment to preventative dental care, from the basic toothbrush issued to every recruit to the forward-deployed dental teams, was a lesson in comprehensive soldier welfare. It demonstrated a national capacity not just for industrial output, but for maintaining the human machinery of war at peak efficiency. This quiet advantage, forged in peacetime and amplified by wartime logistics, hinted at a deeper, more systemic readiness. But was this merely a matter of better access to dentists, or did it point to fundamental differences in national priorities that would redefine military strategy for decades to come? The answer lies deeper than just the immediate availability of dental services. It was a reflection of two fundamentally different approaches to public health, forged in divergent historical contexts. In the United States, the early 20th century saw the rise of a robust public health movement, driven by progressive ideals and a growing understanding of germ theory. Philanthropic organizations, like the Rockefeller Foundation, invested heavily in public health infrastructure from the 1910s onward, pushing for widespread sanitation, disease prevention, and crucially, health education. This wasn't just about curing ailments. It was about building a healthier populace from the ground up. By the 1930s, American schools routinely incorporated dental hygiene lessons, teaching children the importance of brushing and regular checkups. The American Dental Association, alongside state health departments, launched campaigns promoting fluoride in water and advocating for early intervention. This created a cultural expectation of preventative care, a proactive stance on health that became ingrained in society. Consider the average American child growing up in, say, Indiana in 1935. They might have learned about Captain Custard or other cartoon characters promoting good dental habits in school, received free toothbrushes, or seen public service announcements stressing oral hygiene. This widespread, consistent messaging wasn't a luxury. It was a deliberate national investment in human capital. It meant that by the time these children became young men eligible for military service in 1941, their baseline dental health was significantly better than previous generations. This societal commitment, spanning decades, created a distinct advantage that manifested physically in millions of recruits. It was an unseen current flowing through the vast machinery of American life, quietly preparing a generation for the immense physical demands of global conflict. Across the Atlantic, Britain's public health journey, while equally dedicated, faced different challenges and priorities. The legacy of the Industrial Revolution meant dealing with crowded, often unsanitary urban environments, and a health system primarily focused on treating acute illness rather than widespread prevention. While figures like Sir John Simon had laid foundational public health acts in the 19th century, the sheer scale of poverty and the immediate demands of infectious diseases often overshadowed preventative dental care. The National Health Insurance Act of 1911 provided some access to medical benefits, but dental care was often an optional extra, not a core provision. For many working-class families, a visit to the dentist was reserved for emergencies, a painful extraction, not a routine checkup. The idea of widespread fluoride in water was still decades away from serious consideration, and public education campaigns for dental hygiene were less pervasive compared to their American counterparts. This isn't to say Britain neglected its people's health. Far from it. But its resources and focus were often directed towards different battles: combating tuberculosis, improving sanitation in slums, or dealing with the immediate aftermath of economic depressions. The subtle, long-term investment in preventative dental care simply didn't receive the same systemic priority. As a result, the average British recruit entering service often brought with them a lifetime of accumulated dental issues, a direct consequence of these differing national approaches. The contrast was stark. One nation built a robust preventative shield. The other focused on patching wounds as they appeared. This fundamental divergence in peacetime societal investment would soon reveal itself as a critical factor in the brutal calculus of wartime endurance. What then did this mean for the actual fighting capabilities of the Allied forces when these two cultures converged on the battlefields of Europe? The convergence of these two distinct approaches, American preventative care and British reactive treatment, cast a long shadow over the battlefields of Europe, shaping the very fabric of Allied fighting power in ways few strategists then fully grasped. It meant that when a British infantryman, perhaps fighting through the hedgerows of Normandy in the summer of 1944, suffered a severe toothache, his options were often limited to painful extraction by a stretched medical unit, or worse, enduring the agony on the front line. This wasn't a hypothetical. Records from the British Army Medical Services consistently show a higher incidence of dental-related incapacitation among their troops compared to their American counterparts. It meant valuable fighting men, trained and equipped, were taken out of action not by enemy fire, but by a preventable silent enemy festering in their own mouths. For the American soldier, however, the story was often different. Having undergone rigorous dental screening and received prophylactic care during training, and with mobile dental units operating surprisingly close to the front, the likelihood of a debilitating dental emergency was significantly reduced. Imagine a GI from the 29th Infantry Division pushing through the brutal urban fighting of Brest in September 1944. His focus could remain entirely on the enemy, on his objective, not on a searing pain in his jaw. This wasn't about comfort, it was about combat effectiveness. A unit with fewer men sidelined by dental issues maintained its strength, its cohesion, and its operational tempo. This translated directly into a higher percentage of men fit for duty at any given moment, a crucial factor when every rifle and every pair of boots on the ground could tip the balance of a skirmish or an entire offensive. This seemingly minor difference in individual wellness became a force multiplier at the tactical level. The true turning point, the unexpected insight that inverted conventional thinking was this: a nation's public health infrastructure, built over decades of peace, could become as vital a strategic asset in total war as its industrial capacity or its armaments factories. It wasn't just about patching up battle wounds. It was about preventing the invisible wounds that could cripple an army from within. While British medical officers grappled with a significant proportion of their non-combat casualties stemming from dental problems, the American forces experienced a markedly lower rate. For instance, data from the U.S. Army's European Theater of Operations, spanning 1942 to 1945, reveals that while millions of dental procedures were performed, the preventative approach significantly reduced the number of man-days lost to severe dental illness compared to what would have been expected without such comprehensive care. This meant fewer hospital beds occupied by toothaches, fewer medical personnel diverted from treating trauma, and ultimately more men available for the fight. Consider the logistical ripple effect. Every soldier pulled from the line due to dental pain still required food, shelter, and transportation, but contributed nothing to the immediate combat effort. The American system, by minimizing these instances, effectively optimized its human resources. This wasn't some grand, innovative weapon. It was the quiet, relentless efficiency of a well-maintained human machine. The British, seeing this contrast firsthand, began to understand that national health wasn't just a social good. It was a strategic imperative, a fundamental component of military power. The sight of American soldiers chewing vigorously on their hardtack rations without complaint, while their British comrades struggled with aching molars, was a stark, daily reminder of this profound disparity. Hold this detail for a second, because it redefines everything that comes next. This wasn't just about soldiers either. The underlying health of the home front also played a role in sustaining the war effort. A healthier civilian population meant a more productive workforce, fewer sick days in factories producing crucial war materials, and a more resilient society capable of enduring the immense pressures of total war. The American investment in public health, from school programs to community clinics, had created a human capital reserve that proved invaluable. It meant that when the call to arms came, the nation could draw upon a pool of recruits who, on average, were not only physically robust, but also less prone to debilitating, preventable ailments. This societal resilience, forged in the quiet decisions of peacetime policy, became a silent force multiplier that impacted everything from troop deployment strategies to the endurance of entire divisions. It challenged military planners to look beyond the obvious metrics of tanks and planes and consider the deeper, human elements that underpin a nation's ability to wage war effectively. The robustness of American dental health, therefore, served as a subtle yet potent indicator of the profound, often invisible, advantages that the United States brought to the Allied cause, advantages forged not on the battlefield, but in the quiet workings of peacetime society and the immense logistical engine that now powered its war machine. This deep-seated advantage didn't just affect individual soldiers, it influenced the very strategic calculus of the war, subtly shifting the balance of human endurance and operational capacity. The strategic implications extended beyond mere numbers of available troops. It shaped the psychological landscape of the war. A fighting force confident in its own physical well-being, knowing that even minor ailments would be addressed promptly, possessed a different kind of morale. This wasn't just about patriotic fervor. It was about the tangible assurance that their nation cared for them, even in the most brutal conditions. This sense of being cared for, of having a system designed to keep them healthy and effective, subtly bolstered their resolve. It allowed them to focus on the mission with fewer internal distractions, to endure hardships with greater resilience. Conversely, for soldiers constantly battling physical discomfort, the psychological burden of pain could erode spirits and undermine confidence, even in the bravest men. The contrast was palpable, a silent lesson in the holistic nature of military readiness, proving that true strength isn't just in firepower, but in the well-being of every single soldier. This comprehensive approach to soldier health, epitomized by the focus on dental care, became a blueprint for post-war military planning and even influenced civilian public health initiatives globally. It demonstrated that investing in preventative care wasn't just humane, it was highly pragmatic, yielding tangible strategic returns. The lessons learned from those American smiles, flashing unexpectedly in the grim backdrop of wartime Britain, continued to resonate long after the last shot was fired. They underscored the critical importance of national infrastructure and public health policy as foundational elements of a nation's security, proving that sometimes the most powerful advantages are forged far from the front lines, in the quiet, consistent efforts to build a healthier society. The enduring lesson from those American smiles wasn't lost on Britain. The stark contrast observed during the war catalyzed a profound reevaluation of national health priorities, leading directly to monumental shifts in how nations approached the well-being of their citizens and their fighting forces. For Britain, the experience of wartime rationing, the Blitz, and the visible disparity in health with their American allies fueled a powerful movement for systemic change. This wasn't merely about patching up immediate problems. It was about fundamentally restructuring society to prevent them. The creation of the National Health Service in 1948, championed by figures like Aneurin Bevan, the then Minister of Health, emerged directly from this crucible. The NHS wasn't solely a response to dental issues, of course, but the collective experience of wartime health inequalities, including the striking difference in oral health, underscored the urgent need for universal, accessible healthcare. The logic was clear. A nation's strength, its resilience in crisis, was inextricably linked to the health of its people, from the factory worker to the frontline soldier. This radical shift in Britain reflected a growing international consensus that public health was not a luxury, but a fundamental component of national security and economic prosperity. The United States, while not adopting a universal healthcare system, continued to invest heavily in public health infrastructure and preventative medicine. The post-war era saw the expansion of dental education programs, the widespread adoption of fluoridation in municipal water supplies, beginning significantly in the 1950s, and continued public awareness campaigns. These initiatives, often driven by the same medical and dental associations that had prepared the GI generation, aimed to cement the gains made during the war and prevent a return to widespread dental decay. The military, too, formalized and expanded its rigorous preventative dental care, recognizing it as a non-negotiable aspect of troop readiness. The U.S. Army Dental Corps continued to be a global leader, refining its methods and deploying advanced techniques to ensure soldiers remained combat-ready. The insights from World War II regarding human capital extended far beyond dental care. Military strategists and public health experts began to view the entire spectrum of soldier welfare, nutrition, mental health, physical fitness, and preventative medicine as interconnected elements of national power. The concept of total war had revealed that victory wasn't just about superior armaments or tactics. It was about the sustained endurance of populations, both civilian and military. A healthy populace meant a robust industrial base, a steady supply of fit recruits, and a society capable of absorbing immense pressure. This understanding profoundly influenced post-war military doctrines, which increasingly incorporated comprehensive health programs designed to maintain peak physical and psychological condition throughout a soldier's career. The investment in human potential, once a subtle undercurrent, became an explicit strategic priority. This global reevaluation of health as a strategic asset also saw the rise of powerful international organizations. The World Health Organization, formally established in 1948, emerged from a similar understanding that global health challenges required coordinated, preventative action. Its charter reflected the lessons of the war, emphasizing that the health of all peoples is fundamental to the attainment of peace and security. The unexpected robustness of American dental health, therefore, became a powerful, if quiet, case study that informed these sweeping changes. It demonstrated that seemingly minor details, nurtured over decades of peacetime policy and societal investment, could manifest as profound advantages in the crucible of global conflict. It was a testament to the idea that a nation's true strength is built not just on its immediate military might, but on the long-term well-being and resilience of its citizens. But as nations rebuilt and redefined their health strategies, did they truly grasp the full, subtle power of preventative care? Or were some lessons still waiting to be fully understood in the decades that followed, facing new kinds of global challenges? The question of whether the full, subtle power of preventative care was truly grasped in the decades that followed is complex. While the immediate post-war era saw a surge in public health initiatives, the urgency of global reconstruction and the looming shadow of the Cold War often shifted focus. In the United States, the establishment of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in 1946 marked a significant governmental commitment to public health surveillance and disease prevention, a direct descendant of wartime epidemiological efforts. This momentum carried into civilian life, notably with the widespread adoption of community water fluoridation, which truly took off in the 1950s after successful trials in Grand Rapids, Michigan. This simple, cost-effective measure, adding fluoride to public water supplies, represented a monumental leap in preventative dental health for an entire generation. Building directly on the wartime insights, it was a societal investment, a quiet revolution in oral hygiene that continued to strengthen the human capital of the nation. But even with these advancements, the lessons of systemic, invisible advantages were sometimes challenged by new threats. The Cold War, with its emphasis on nuclear deterrence and conventional military might, sometimes relegated the softer aspects of troop welfare to a secondary concern, at least in the public discourse. Yet, within the military, the U.S. Army Dental Corps and its counterparts in other branches maintained a rigorous commitment to the lessons of World War II. During the Korean War, from 1950 to 1953, American forces continued to benefit from comprehensive dental screening and field dental units, ensuring that toothache and oral infection remained a minimal cause of non-combat incapacity. This wasn't accidental. It was the direct result of doctrine formalized in the wake of the previous global conflict, recognizing that a soldier's mouth could be as critical to combat readiness as their rifle. This consistent application of preventative principles ensured that the dental health advantage, once a surprise to the British, became a sustained, expected element of American military strength, a cognitive refrain echoing the earlier disparity. Across the Atlantic, nations like Britain, though having initiated the monumental National Health Service, still faced an uphill battle in translating universal access into universal preventative dental health. While the NHS provided treatment for all, overcoming decades of neglect and ingrained habits took time. The widespread adoption of fluoridation, for instance, met with more resistance and slower implementation in parts of Europe compared to the United States, often due to differing public health philosophies or local political hurdles. This created a new, albeit less stark, divergence. The U.S., with its proactive, decades-long investment in public dental education and fluoridation, continued to build on its initial advantage, making it a permanent fixture of national health. The lesson here was clear. Building a resilient society wasn't a one-time fix, but a continuous, evolving commitment. As the world moved into the Vietnam era, from the mid-1950s to the mid-1970s, the challenges to soldier health evolved. Tropical diseases, psychological trauma, and new forms of combat injury dominated headlines. Yet, the foundational importance of routine dental care persisted. Mobile dental teams, often operating under incredibly arduous conditions, continue to perform millions of procedures, from routine fillings to complex oral surgeries, ensuring that the GIs fighting in the sweltering jungles and rice paddies were not sidelined by preventable oral pain. This unwavering commitment, even in the chaos of guerrilla warfare, underscored the deep institutionalization of the World War II lessons. It proved that the invisible advantage wasn't just a fleeting wartime phenomenon, but a fundamental pillar of sustained military effectiveness. The ability to maintain a healthy, functioning force, free from the silent attrition of preventable illness, remained a strategic imperative. This continuous investment in soldier health wasn't just about individual well-being. It was about maintaining unit cohesion and operational tempo. A platoon leader in the Mekong Delta didn't have to worry about half his men being pulled from patrol due to agonizing toothaches, allowing him to focus on the immediate tactical threats. This systemic reliability, often taken for granted, was a direct legacy of the observations made by British officers in the 1940s. It was the quiet triumph of foresight and consistent policy over short-term expediency. The underlying principle remained: small, consistent preventative actions scaled across millions yield massive strategic returns. But as new technologies emerged and global health landscapes shifted dramatically in the late 20th century, would these core lessons remain universally applicable? Or would the nature of warfare and societal health present unforeseen complications? The late 20th century, however, brought a new set of variables that tested these established principles. The rise of globalization, rapid shifts in dietary habits, and the increasing complexity of healthcare systems began to present unforeseen complications. Even as fluoridation continued its quiet revolution in dental health, particularly in the United States, the burgeoning availability of highly processed foods and sugary beverages across Western societies introduced new challenges. This wasn't a return to the pre-war era, but a subtle erosion of the gains. In the civilian population, despite advancements in dental technology and access to care, pockets of poor oral health persisted, often linked to socioeconomic disparities. This served as a powerful reminder that preventative health was not a static achievement, but a continuous battle against evolving societal trends. Within the military, the commitment to dental readiness remained steadfast. Operations like Desert Storm in 1991, or the interventions in the Balkans throughout the 1990s, saw U.S. forces deployed with the same comprehensive dental support that had become standard since World War II. Mobile dental clinics, now equipped with advanced digital imaging and materials, could provide a wider range of treatments closer to the front lines. The lessons of sustained operational readiness through preventative care were deeply ingrained in military doctrine. However, the nature of deployments began to change. Shorter, more frequent rotations, often to diverse and challenging environments, placed different stresses on soldiers and their support systems. Maintaining consistent dental health across a rapidly deploying, globally dispersed force required constant adaptation and significant logistical effort. Underscoring the continuous demand on the immense logistical engine first noted during World War II, the early 21st century brought its own distinct pressures. The wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, beginning in 2001 and 2003 respectively, were protracted, asymmetric conflicts fought in harsh, remote conditions. The focus on immediate combat priorities often overshadowed long-term health planning in the public consciousness. Yet within the military health system, the importance of dental readiness never wavered. Data from the U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, during these conflicts consistently highlighted dental problems as a leading cause of non-battle injury and medical evacuations from theater. While the overall rates were still significantly lower than what would have been seen without rigorous preventative programs, these figures were a stark reminder that even with decades of progress, the silent attrition of dental issues could still impact operational effectiveness. A soldier in a remote outpost in Helmand Province, suffering from an abscessed tooth, was still a soldier pulled from the fight, a resource diverted, and a strain on an already stretched medical supply chain. This wasn't about a lack of care. It was about the sheer scale and duration of the deployments, testing the limits of even the most robust systems. The response was a renewed emphasis on pre-deployment dental screenings and aggressive in-theater preventative programs. The U.S. military refined its dental classifications, ensuring that only soldiers with minimal risk of dental emergencies were deployed to remote areas, a direct echo of the readiness principles established for D-Day. This wasn't just about individual comfort. It was a strategic decision to minimize non-combat losses and maximize combat power. The financial cost of these programs was substantial, yet it was consistently justified by the far greater cost of medical evacuations, lost operational days, and eroded morale. The invisible advantage, forged in the clinics and public health policies of the mid-20th century, continued to prove its worth, even against the backdrop of entirely different global threats and technological capabilities. It showed that while the enemy might change, the fundamental human element of warfare, and the need to keep that element optimally functional, remained constant. The question wasn't if preventative health was important, but how to continually adapt its delivery in an ever-changing world. This ongoing adaptation wasn't limited to the military. Civilian healthcare systems worldwide continued to grapple with the balance between reactive treatment and preventative care. The economic implications of dental health became increasingly clear. Nations with robust public health infrastructures, often inspired by the post-World War II shifts, consistently demonstrated better overall population health outcomes and lower long-term healthcare costs. The initial shock of the British in World War II, witnessing the superior dental health of American soldiers, had sparked a global conversation about public health as a strategic asset. Decades later, with the rise of chronic diseases and the aging of populations, that conversation evolved, but its core truth endured. A healthy population is a resilient population, capable of weathering not just the storms of war, but the everyday challenges of peace and economic competition. The subtle power of a nation's commitment to its citizens' well-being, once revealed in a surprising dental disparity, continued to shape national policy and global health initiatives. The story of American teeth in wartime Britain, therefore, isn't just a historical anecdote. It's a foundational text in the ongoing narrative of human capital as a strategic imperative. But how does this translate to the hyper-connected, often sedentary world of today? And what final critical lesson does it offer us as we navigate the complexities of the 21st century? The answer, it turns out, lies not in a simple historical footnote, but in a profound, enduring principle. In our hyper-connected, often sedentary 21st century world, where information is abundant yet wisdom often scarce, the foundational lesson from those healthier American teeth remains startlingly relevant. The quiet, consistent investment in preventative health, once a surprising advantage in wartime, is now a critical, ongoing challenge. We face new invisible enemies: the pervasive availability of highly processed foods, the sedentary nature of modern work, and the digital distractions that often pull us away from active, healthy lifestyles. These are the contemporary equivalents of the pre-war dietary deficiencies and lack of access that plagued earlier generations, albeit in a different guise. The strategic imperative, however, is unchanged. A nation's strength, its resilience, its capacity for innovation and defense remains fundamentally tied to the health and vitality of its people. The surprise of the British in 1942, witnessing soldiers with robust oral health, wasn't just about teeth, it was about a system, a societal commitment that began decades before the first shot was fired. It was a silent testament to the power of public health infrastructure, of consistent education, and of a collective understanding that individual well-being aggregates into national strength. The logistical marvel that delivered millions of troops across the Atlantic wasn't just about ships and supplies. It was also about delivering a fighting force fit to endure, a force whose basic human needs, like healthy teeth, had been systematically addressed. This isn't just a story from World War II. It's a timeless blueprint for national resilience. The real battle isn't always fought with bullets and bombs. Sometimes it's won quietly, in the everyday choices and long-term investments that build a healthier society. If this deeper dive into an overlooked corner of history has opened your eyes to how invisible factors shape our world, then subscribe now to WW2 Beyond Battles so you don't miss our next exploration into the hidden engines of history. Leave a like if you want us to keep uncovering these vital, often surprising connections. And tell me in the comments, what subtle, unseen advantage do you think shaped another pivotal moment in history? Your insights fuel our next journey.